Welcome to the Cape Ann Museum. A lot of you I recognize. There's some that I don't recognize, but that doesn't mean you haven't been here before. So if anyone is new to the museum, welcome. My name is Leon Doucette. I'm one of the curatorial assistants here at the museum, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all today. In a second, I'm going to be introducing Mary Ellen Lepianka, who, along with Bob Whitmarsh, is one of the co-chairs of the city's Historical Commission. I served on the commission myself a few years ago. It was a lot of fun, and then I accidentally moved to Beverly and couldn't serve on the commission anymore. But I've kept in touch with everybody, and seems like the commission's doing some great work. Before I hand you guys over, I just want to point out that there are a few extra programs on that chair by the door if anyone didn't get one.
I'd like to very much thank the Cape Ann Museum for hosting this event. This is the 4th or 5th year, we can't quite figure out, that we've been doing this here. So it's a wonderful venue for an event like this. So this is our 2019 awards, and just something about the Historical Commission. We're on the city's website under boards and commissions. And our mission statement and meeting agendas and minutes are all posted there, along with various documents relating to historic preservation efforts in Gloucester. And the aim of the commission is to preserve and protect our historical resources and to develop public awareness of them and appreciation of historically significant sites and structures. We usually meet on the last Monday of every month at 6:30. In this 3rd floor conference room in City Hall that has the happy face on it. And we welcome visitors and prospective alternates and new members and volunteer advisors and consultants. Our next regular meeting is actually going to be on June 17th, which is not the last Monday, but on the last Monday I'm giving a presentation at a conference and can't be there, so we moved it, but it's usually the last Monday. And we're skipping the May meeting because of our work to get this going. And we are very much looking for new members. We need new participants and are anticipating vacancies and so on. We encourage public participation in all our activities, and we need your suggestions, including suggestions from preservation awards, because there are always more worthy projects that are out there that we never learn of because we would have to be driving around the city all the time in order to see what's going on, and we just can't do it as volunteers. And as a community, we face the ongoing challenge of balancing the city's need for growth and development with the need to preserve for posterity its cultural legacy and its character as a uniquely historic place. And it is a balancing act. These are the Preservation Award criteria for properties and projects. And as I mentioned, there are more projects deserving of awards than we are presenting today. These are the criteria. And these are the categories. And we've extended our categories to go beyond buildings to include landscapes, media, education, and arts and letters. All in service to the values of historic preservation. And our first award recipient this year is Brian Melanson, a general contractor of Melanson Construction Company of Woburn, for his cooperation in preserving a historically significant building in Gloucester, for which he had requested and received a permit to demolish. And to introduce Brian and present his award is my fellow co-chair, Bob Whitmarsh.
Good afternoon, everyone. Brian, are you here? Yeah, come on up.
You want to go through the slides?
Okay.
The arrow.
To the right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's modern technology.
Okay, all right. So this is the Ocean View Inn, which ended up being in great disrepair and cannot be saved. But there is a property that will be saved. The thing here is,
The garage that was gonna be saved.
was that?
The other one is being saved.
The other one.
Yeah.
The other one's being saved.
There's text there, Bob.
Right, okay. Thank you. We didn't do a dress rehearsal on this. The Ocean View Inn was built more than 100 years ago and was known as Twin Lights Manor. It was bought by a local developer along with other buildings on the property, including a motel. And that's Brian. Okay. Another 100-year-old building on the Ocean View property was known as High Cliff Lodge, a favorite venue for many Cape Ann weddings and banquets over the years. The development is Jeff Melanson of Melanson Construction. When we learned that demolition permits had been obtained for these historically significant buildings, the Historical Commission contacted Mr. Melanson to ask for a conversation about possible alternatives. It turned out he was not aware of their significance and more than willing to mitigate the loss of cultural heritage. Mr. Melanson altered his plans to restore High Cliff Lodge rather than destroy it, and offered to allow us to photo document the unsalvageable Tudor Revival Manor house before it disappeared forever. This is the kind of collaboration the Historical Commission hopes for with owners, realtors, architects, designers, developers, and contractors who are dealing with historically significant properties. Gloucester, at present, does not have a means of delaying demolitions long enough to seek alternatives, or even of notifying us that a demolition permit has been issued. Even with such measures in place, we rely on the goodwill of professionals like Brian Melanson to ensure that development does not strip Gloucester of essential character and iconic past. Here is development team. Here is Brian in the center. He's also here too. Okay.
Now go back one.
Okay. Okay. With great pleasure, Brian, we'll award this award from the Gloucester Historical Commission
Thank you.
for preservation.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I've been in the business for 35 years, and this is my first Historic Preservation Award, so I'm excited about that. And we're looking forward to the restoration of the Cliff House, as it's called. When we first were introduced to this property, it's been sitting vacant for some 5 or 6 years after being abruptly shut down, and it went to auction. And for the past 5 years or so, has been in disrepair, and it's over the years it's taken its toll on the property, especially the bigger middle house there. So when we looked at the property, and when it was coming off of auction, it was introduced to us, and there was a developer before that had some plans, and had approached the town, but it never went anywhere. So they were looking to unload it, and my bank that I deal with had the note on the property, and they introduced it to me, and they said, you know, you have by rights 6 lots there on the street for 2 families, and you can just go ahead and build 6 lots, and that's how I bought the property. After I was introduced and contacts were made about the significance of the properties, we looked into it, and it didn't seem like 6 two-family houses to be sold as condominiums probably served that property well. It has a tremendous amount of potential there, so we took a step back, had a little bit of a vision for the property, and we decided that that first house, the Cliff House, we could restore. We took a good look at it. It's about 7,500 square feet of a building, and we'll put probably about $2 million of renovation into it. But when it's done, it's going to be magnificent, and I think the town will be happy with what we've done. And From there, we're gonna move along. We've got 4 lots approved on the street. We'll do a nice, a beautiful single family right beside that. And then the next 2 lots, we'll either do a 2-family or a single. And then that opens us up to, there's a remaining parcel of about 3 to 4 acres that we're drawing plans for a small road with a cul-de-sac and some type of residential development there. So we're excited. When it's all done, it's gonna be beautiful, and I appreciate the award.
It's wonderful, and it's our first experience with working directly with the developer to, as I say, balance development with preservation. So it was wonderful. Our next award recipient is Ross Burton for his reconstruction or rebuilding of Virginia Lee Burton's Little House at the Lanesville Community Center. And the Lanesville Community Center is also being awarded a certificate for their hosting of that event on their grounds, on their property. It's another award that's being introduced by Bob Whitmarsh.
I'll do better this time. Let's see. Okay. There's no text here.
No, I don't know what happened to it.
Okay. Well, this is, in this picture here, photo, is Virginia Lee Burton in the Little House. And she did a lot of her writing and illustrating there. This is a new rebuilt little house on the grounds of the Lanesville Community Center. Another photo here. And this was, her writing cottage, carrying on her legacy, reading, writing, and the arts. She had a great influence on young people in the country, if not the world, actually. Back here we are. Okay. So Ross and Chris, if you're here.
Chris was gonna try to make it. I'm here.
Okay. Oh, good.
Chris,
Yep.
Can we get the lights turned up a little bit for a minute?
sure.
That'd be great.
He's on it.
Thank you.
Yep. He's
Because I want everybody who worked on the project with me to stand up, like these people, this person. Will everybody who worked on the project
Oh, yes.
see this with us, please? And there's a list this long of all the people who made it happen. So on behalf of all of us, we want to say thank you.
This is for Lanesville Community Center, and here's yours.
Thank you.
And by all means, please tell us about your project.
I have to tell you that the way this started was in March of 2017. Mary Ellen was very nice, and she welcomed me to the meeting. Bob and I went to high school together, so we go back to the prehistoric age. And Mary Ellen, I came in with a presentation. I had a tie on, a projector, a video. And she was very polite, and she said, you only have Chris and I were sitting there, right? You only have 10 minutes. And I said, but we have an hour's worth of presentation for you. And Bob nicely said, well, that's lovely, but, and Mary Ellen said, right? So we cut it down to 12 minutes. So I'll try
the rest of the hour today for you.
So this is what we do. So this project actually started when Ginny died. After she died, her son had the property out at the end of Folly Point Road. As you know, I hope all of you know that in the back of this room, until, 5 years ago, were all the Folly Cove designer block prints. And upstairs, you saw months' worth of Little House from Japan. So I don't need to talk about Virginia Lee Burton in the context of Cape Ann. But what was thrilling to me was the flexibility of your group accepting us as a building and not a property or all of the rigmarole that might have happened. The next thing that I want to thank you for is honoring our word that we gave you that night. Bill Remsen, are you here?
Right.
Bill, you said to both of us, you said, your proposal is $50,000. If we only give you $30,000, do you think you can do it? Do you remember?
If you say so.
Yeah, I remember. And we said, both of us turned to you and said, we will. So I want you to know that we did. And there's been 8 months of programming. There's been 8 months of programming for children, reading books. So people like the Natty family, who you all know, 3 generations of Natty. One of them's on your board here, Susie Natty. Generations of Natty participated in that. None of them could be here. Ah, good. Oh, I thought there was somebody here from the Natty family. So Peter Natty did the wood that replaced the outside. Lee Natty did a wonderful documentary about the project. Susie Natty read one of the 5 book readings we've had. So many people in this room participated in the process. Chris, a group, the board at the community center accepted it when other parts of Cape Ann said, no, we can't really do that building. It's too small, it doesn't matter. There are lots of comments. One other notable comment that was made that you and I both kind of chuckled about is somebody who looked at the stack of materials after they had been moved off said, it's not worth it. So no, it's all good, because what it does is it helps you motivate yourself to stay with it. So on behalf of me, and I'd like Chris to be able to say something, I appreciate everybody who put every hour into it, all the passion that went into it, all of the support that you took us at our word. We said we'd do it, and we've had many donors. The building center donated $5,000. There have been private donations from people at $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. So there's many, many people responsible for the work. There's been hard labor. Russell Hobbs worked for months on that, and Melissa, everybody. Christine was there every day. She's a nurse, and that helped on a project like this. Lots of broken. So we had. It was hard work, but I want to say we appreciate the connection also with the Cape Ann Museum. You know, where did the Folly Cove designers go when they rested? The Folly Cove designers, they came to the Cape Ann Museum. So there's a natural, and I'm glad to see Oliver is bringing that forward in the mission.
Thanks, Sandy. I don't have an hour, although I could probably go on and on. But my name is Chris Wagner. I'm president of the board of the Lanesville Community Center, and we're pretty happy to have the writing cottage on our property, and it's built solid and preserved for all eternity, which is what the Historical Society is about. And this whole process wouldn't have happened without that first meeting with the Historical Society saying, yes, this is a valuable structure that has cultural significance on Cape Ann. And without that determination, it's not old enough to be sort of granted that by right. It had to be, the Historical Society had to say that. And the commission had to say that to us and said, yes, we support this. And that's what started the whole thing. And so that just set the dominoes in motion, and it just kind of kept going. And I had the privilege of being the guy on the phone. I'm a project manager and a construction manager in my professional life, and so this kind of got put into the mix, and I was getting a lot of phone calls and emails from these guys. Hey, we need this on this day. We need this on, when are the plasterers coming? So I got the lever out and leveraged a bunch of, that building center donation. That was huge. That was almost all the building materials we needed, which was amazing. So thank you to the Huff family for that. And everybody who helped. I mean, there's so many people, there's so many neighbors who just stopped by and picked up a wall. When we were moving stuff, there's so many people that couldn't be here, and it wouldn't have happened without all of those, individual 5 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 10 days, a month of people stopping by and helping. So thank you, everybody. And come on out to one of the programs sometime. They're not just for kids. Check our website, LanesvilleCommunityCenter.com or .org, and you'll find us there. Thank you.
Sorry? Yeah?
This would not have happened if it hadn't been for a large grant from the Community Preservation Committee. And it was not mentioned among the
I can't find the notes.
people that were helping on the thing. I think that everybody should know that, that there was a grant for $30,000 from the Community Preservation Committee of the city. It's your tax money that goes into that fund, and I think it's important that they be recognized for what they did for this project.
Thank you, Hank. I think that people do need to know more about the Community Preservation Act, it's so important to things like this. There are so many worthy causes, and it comes from the little percent that we pay on our taxes, and it's matched by some money from the state. So it's really good that we do these things. Otherwise, they might not happen. Thank you.
Thank you, and I have a technical glitch, thank you.
Used to walk in the front door of the house, and you were in the foyer, and then you couldn't really see anything that way. There was a closet, just a simple closet to put your clothes in. And Helen got rid of that, and now you walk straight through that area, right into the mudroom, into the kitchen, and the porch that she designed was basically just extending the porch from the front of the house right around the side. And is there a way we can click to like the next?
Forward arrow. Is this one?
Probably that.
Yeah.
Burp.
There you go. You want that one or the next
Yeah.
one?
So no, that's good. So
And then one more to the.
So like when, this is the view from when you pull in the driveway and look up, that's what you used to enter into, which was kind of cool. But the front porch had a dead end on it right there with the railing. And that little curvy, swervy thing hides a few stairs to get into the back door. And you had to walk up the lawn to do so. So Helen took that front porch and wrapped it around the side with all the same details. And so that really reduced the amount of steps you needed from the driveway and connected the front porch around the side where, you know, you could look down the street, see all those people walking back up with their chairs from the beach. So if you look at that porch there, like one of those railing sections is original, and then the other ones were all made brand new to match exactly. And you'll see that it looks like the porch was always there because we took off the shingles on the side of the house that were all weathered one at a time and reinstalled them on the front of the porch where it's extended. Another challenge we had, of course, is the railings are only 29 inches tall on the front of the house, and we're trying to extend that same exact porch look all the way around the side. So we kept the railings the same and what appears to be the porch flooring sticking out under the railing, but in fact that's, we lowered the porch inside and created a little curb, so our railings are actually up on a little bit of a curve on the inside, but from the outside they look like the front of the house. And in doing so, what it did is it got a couple of stairs. If you'll see those two long stairs past that door, that's where we dropped down into the new section of porch, which gave you a little higher elevated ceiling height, which is nice. And then on the inside, we often, you know, like I said, we take everything apart carefully. We might spend a couple of days, well, we probably spend about a week protecting floors. We wash them, we protect them, then we take off the doors and take off all the parts that we can reuse. So there's the soapstone sink and there's two cabinets that you can't see, one there and one across from it. And so we save all that stuff, put it in the basement. Helen's beautiful design, we just put it all back in slightly different locations. So that cabinet you see there is, say, 80% new, 80% original, and 20% new with a few parts here and there that you really can't see. We're really just so pleased to work with people, crazy people. You're all crazy, by the way, because you're crazy about history and architecture in Gloucester, and I love crazy people. Alan, thanks.
I'll say one thing, that Mike and I have worked together for probably, I don't know, 15, 20 years. it's such a pleasure to form a team, and of course, the most important are the clients, and we couldn't have asked for better clients. I mean, it was a wonderful experience, and friendships are formed. But I think one of the greatest, Mike and I have always laughed and said, the greatest compliment is when people come to the house after it's done and say, "So what'd you do?"
Yeah.
So that's sort of the magic of it, when we follow what the house instructions. So thanks very much.
The Historical Commission would next like to recognize 1623 Studios for their programming that relates to the history of Cape Ann. They've done quite a lot of programming and have more coming. Director Eric Archer has headed up major changes and improvements in the television station that was formerly called Cape Ann Cable TV. Here are the principal staff at 1623 Studios who have been involved in the history programming. They've been doing taping interviews for the committee for Gloucester's 400th anniversary, and that has included me with my granddaughter interviewing me about the founding of Cape Ann and Gloucester. They've also taped me talking about Native American place names here. And all these things end up being on YouTube. In addition, we've been doing podcasts there. Cape Ann TV, or 1623 Studios, is publishing a timeline series called History Shorts. This was initiated by Corey Kookaroo of 1623 Studios, and he approached us with the idea of collaborating on broadcasts of history shorts about Gloucester. We supply Corey with timelines, and he does original research in the Cape Ann Museum for images and puts them together with his own scripting. He develops a narrative. So far, he's done a number of clips. Are 3 of the clips. Then they are all on YouTube, and we're going to play one of them, which we are going to click on that once.
I'm Corey Kookaroo,
Whoops.
1623 Studios, and this is the story behind Gloucester's American Legion building.
Oh yeah,
Designed in
Chrome.
the style of a Greek temple, the Legion was built in 1844 and served as Gloucester's first town hall. It was used for everything from temperance lectures and Sunday school to theatricals and even a bowling alley. After City Hall was built in 1869, the original Arch to Old Cape Ann was modified and housed the Forbes School until the city leased it to a group of World War I veterans. In 1920, American Legion Post 3 was born, named after Lester Watt, a local Marine killed in battle in France. A second-floor balcony was built and faced a dramatic Joan of Arc statue, a memorial to World War I vets created by noted sculptress and sometime Annapolis resident Anna Hyde Huntington. And get this, the horse used to model for the statue was Frank, borrowed from the Gloucester Fire Department. Do you have a Cape Ann story you want us to share? Contact me at Corey@1623studios.org. Until next time, see you in the neighborhood.
Thank you, and there are others here. I'm tempted to continue playing them, but in the interest of time, I have to move on. He's done clips on the Legion Memorial Building, the first period cemeteries, Stage 4 Park. There's a new one out about the history of Wingershik Beach. And there's another one coming out about the history of Good Harbor Beach. And we encourage everybody to give us ideas for what they would like to have little history snippets on, or history timeline, what the topics should be. So be in touch with us and let us know. It seems like it would be endless, the things that we could talk about. Here we are in 1623 Studios. This is 4 of us from the Historical Commission doing a podcast. We've been trying to tape once a month on topics of historical interest to residents and to visitors, such as architectural history. We often invite guests who are experts to come and be with us to talk. For architectural history, we had Prue Fish with us to discuss Cape Ann's architecture. We also have talked about Cape Ann shipwrecks, historically significant buildings, Stage Fort Park, which has a Stage Fort, which has a very interesting history, and other subjects. And we welcome your ideas. Here to accept the award on behalf of 1623 Studios is Corey Kukuru.
Thank you. I want to thank the Gloucester Historical Commission for this day and Cape Ann Museum. I'm new to 1623 Studios, and this the idea for the Timeline series specifically came about because we knew there was a hunger for historical information, nostalgic photos, et cetera, and we wanted to be able to produce series to help showcase not only historical landmarks and figures, geographical points of interest and buildings, but do it in a modern, efficient way on several of our platforms, not only Channel 12, but Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. We're on all of these platforms. We have a large Facebook following. That's where a lot of these videos are running right now. They're really easy to find. Good Harbor Beach is actually up and running now, Maryland, the history. Yeah. So we want to thank, of course, everyone with the Historical Commission for the factoids. I love it when people do homework for me. And then my job is to turn it into minute-long scripts. And then this is sort of like my second home. I'm in archives all the time trying to find the right imagery. There's such a treasure trove here that we know that this series can just go on and on and on and turn into other things. So we're really looking forward to working with you in the future and spending more time here and sharing these amazing stories with Gloucester and Cape Ann as a whole. So I want to thank my colleagues too. Becky Tober is here, Eric Archer, Maureen Aylward, and we look forward to the next Timeline Cape Ann. Thank you.
And to present the award is Historical Commission member Bill Remsen.
I just want to thank everyone for coming today. It shows you really love Gloucester's history, and cultural heritage preservation is one of the most important things we can do these days. Our culture is important, it's fragile, and it needs help. So I think a critical aspect of cultural heritage preservation is the concept that things matter, but also it's not just the tangible things, it's intangible things, and it's the uses of things. It's how they're used and even reused. And so today we want to honor the Manship Artists and Resident Studios. As we all know, Paul Manship was one of America's most important sculptors of the 20th century. He created his own artistic retreat on 15 wooded acres of land in Lanesville that includes 2 former granite quarries, as you can see on the left here. Interestingly, he relocated 2 historic Cape Ann buildings, a residence and an ox barn, to the site to be used as his home and art studio, and these are still in use today. His work is internationally known. We have examples in this museum and all over the world. This might be familiar from the griffins on Castle Hill and the turtle in the Cape Ann Museum. And his most famous piece is the Prometheus at the skating rink, least famous to me, at the skating rink in Rockefeller Center in New York City. Now, the Manship Artists Residency and Studios, or MARS, M-A-R-S, acquired the Manship's house, former ox barn, studios, gardens, and the 2 quarries to rehabilitate and repurpose as a retreat for artists and sculptors of today, to keep the property in an artistic tradition and active artistry going on. And this is the kind of thing, and so many of these projects really make Gloucester such a special place where you have this kind of community participation. These photos illustrate some of the current activities on the estate. To receive the award, please welcome Rebecca Reynolds, Board President, and Joanne Castano, Vice President of the Manship Artists Residency and Studios. Rebecca? There you go.
Thank you
You'd like
so
to say
much.
something?
Thank you so much. This is such an honor for us. This is a very important year for us, too. It's a very important day, actually, because tomorrow we start our artist residency with residents living there. We've been very busy the last couple years trying to create some programming to get going. But tomorrow we actually welcome our first residents in the house. So it's been a time, coming, and in order to do that, to be able to welcome this person, we had to do a lot of work at this house. As Bill mentioned, these buildings were historic buildings from elsewhere that Paul Manship bought and moved, and, well, he took them apart and rebuilt them. So he built them and bought them, actually, 75 years ago. Just last month, in April, he bought the property, and the same day he bought the house. First the house, and then the following year the barn. And so he took it apart, and he was very lucky. I mean, he's Paul Manship. One of his best friends was Eric Googler, who, like Manship, many people don't know who Eric Googler is, but you know his work, just like you know Paul's work. So Eric Googler was FDR's architect, and the architect that worked on the property, these houses that Manship bought and rebuilt in a way that suited him and his family, that architect was FDR's architect, so he redesigned the White House, and he actually designed the Oval Office. So there's a lot of important historical things going on here, besides the fact that you have one of the most prominent American artists who lived here, who spent time here with his family and his friends, and loved this place, and then his son and daughter-in-law owned it as well. And actually, it's only been in the Manship family until we bought it just a couple of years ago. Honestly, I really didn't know that this was going to be possible. It was a dream of mine because I'm a museum professional by trade, and my specialty is American sculpture. I live in Gloucester, and like everyone said, we just love this place. And then I met Joanne, and then I knew it was really possible because she's been involved with so many important projects here in Gloucester, and knows how to get things done and has all the connections. And it just makes such a big difference having, as they mentioned, a team. We have quite a team. We have a number of board members here. I'd like to invite our board members up here because, one person cannot accomplish any of this. So I know Sandy's here and Harry's here. If you all would like to come up too. Is Betsy here? Is that Jose? Great, great.
Jose's here.
I also have a poster here. We have probably at least 100 people have been volunteering on this project to make this happen so far, and the names are here, and we've had a lot of support. In fact, it was Joanne that brought in the Mass Cultural Council. They were the first that came to the site, and they said, if we had the money, we'd give it to you right away, but this is what you had to do. So this board has worked very hard, along with all these volunteers, to accomplish what we have done today, to restore the house to such a condition that we can actually invite people there. You might see some paint in my hair. We were up late last night getting it ready.
Late this morning.
Late this morning, actually. And I also want to thank the press. We've had some really wonderful press. You may have seen in the Beacon, there was the article about the residents that are coming. So Keith Powers and Gail McCarthy, without their support, and Regina Cole, we wouldn't be able to get out the word about what we're doing so that people understand that it's how important this project is. And I have some flyers that, kind of Mars at a glance. What we found when we talked to people, a lot of people don't know what's happening there. Early on, I remember people were thinking that it had been sold to the Catholic Church and many other things. So if you'd like to take one of these with you. What we're really about is also partnerships. One of our early partnerships was with the Addison Gallery at Phillips Andover, in Phillips Academy in Andover. We had 4 artists, 4 photographers who came to the property, and they photographed, the state that it was in when the Manships left it. People often came and they said it seemed like they had just left. So they were inspired by the site, and this exhibition happened at the Addison Gallery last year from October through January of this year. And one of our more recent partnerships is with the Cape Ann Museum here and the Gloucester Education Foundation. We purchased an Acorn press, which was a Folly Cove designer press, and it's on loan and in the O'Malley School. The kids in the school have been learning about the Folly Cove designers. We have so much about Lanesville and Virginia Lee Natty that's happening here today. So they've been learning about that and making prints, but now they're making them on an Acorn press that was owned by a Folly Cove designer printer, one of the Manship relative.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Oh.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you very much, and I think it's great that you have such a wonderful board of directors working with you.
Thank you.
Our next award recipient is Jim Ryan. His award is for preserving Gloucester history, and the historical...
Like to get an idea of like a sense of place, and for me at least, one of the most important facets of that research is maps. So I got in touch with Mr. Ryan, who's been putting together maps of various historical areas, historical maps actually, of various historical areas. The initial one that I had seen that kind of sparked this kind of, process for his award was of the Gloucester quarries. Quarrying, as everyone knows, if you look in the back of this room, was a significant Cape Ann industry, and it tied into the culture of the other side of the Cape, Lanesville, Annisquam, Rockport, etc. His map he had spent the time to annotate the map with modern names and their historical names of the quarries. And as you can see from this picture, there's quite a bit of them. He's also put together some maps of Easton Point, which is a work in progress, and the Bass Rocks Golf Course from 1938, I believe, which I thought was fascinating because it's not an area of my interest. He's a very avid golfer. So, without further ado, Mr. Ryan.
I'll say a few words. Wow, I've never won anything in my life except one golf tournament, 50 years ago. After I completed my quarry map, I got together with Peter Nastis, who's a good old-time friend, and he encouraged me to keep doing this historical map work. And since then, I've done Dogtown Common. I did the Bass Rocks Golf Club in 1938, and the reason I did that was because the whole course has changed. And this is the way it was when I grew up on, caddied and played on. And then currently I'm working on a map of Easton Point, 1870 to 1950. And I'm about 75% through on that. And I was fascinated by Mrs. Olmsted's work, and I'm going to get in touch with her. Thank you very much.
We would next like to present an award to Richard and Cathy Clarke for their stewardship of the Clarke Cemetery, which is a Civil War era cemetery that adjoins the First Parish Cemetery on Centennial Avenue. They have been faithful volunteers in their efforts to restore that cemetery. And to present the award to them is Historical Commission member Sandy Barry, who is also in the Cemetery Advisory Committee. So,
all right. I love this mission statement. This is a mission statement that the Clarkes came up with, and this is a prime example of exemplary stewardship. Cemeteries are intended to be eternal, but without the proper care, these vital links to our history and families often fade away, becoming overgrown and unrecognizable. You'll actually see some examples of that. Join us and help restore, preserve, protect these approximately 186-year-old cemeteries. Together, we can repair the tragic damage by reversing the effects of Mother Nature, neglect, so that this historic site can endure for many more generations to appreciate and to pay their respects. Okay. All right, this little pink dot on the screen on the left is Cathy in the cemetery when they came back and discovered the condition of the cemetery. They're related to a number of people in the cemetery. This is overgrown, unmaintained, prime party spot for the kids. Okay, and then we have Jamie O'Malley up on the right-hand corner, a city councilor that was like, oh my gosh, he's great at landscaping, so he came in and started helping. And then those bags down in the right-hand corner, as it turns out, there's an invasive species called Japanese knotweed, and it has to be double bagged and it can't be put into the compost pile or else you'll get knotweed in your yards. All right. This photo here is the cemetery today. Wow. Okay. It's amazing. Now, it doesn't stay like this. So what they've put into place are volunteer committees. They were instrumental also with the cemetery committee and getting the DPW involved. Now, the DPW was nervous about getting their equipment in there because there were cans, trees, glass, all kinds of broken stones, because you can't just mow over those stones. And they had to get into a steady state in order for them to get it on a schedule to mow it. Now at this point, this is where the fun begins. This is what we all love. A weird group of us really love is getting in there and using tripods. Also, Richard and Cathy were instrumental in helping us talk the DPW into helping us pay for a tripod lift to lift up the stones, not only here, but in all the city-owned cemeteries. What's interesting about this is that also, I want to mention, Awesome Gloucester gave us $1,000 toward doing some historic work in these cemeteries. And in the lower right-hand corner here, you see Russ and Richard coming from the right-hand side, Russell, Rich, another volunteer, Rob, yes, and Cathy. And this is First Parish Burial Ground and lifting some of the stones there. This is an example in the upper left-hand corner. It's the Trask Monument that was broken and found in this condition. And I don't know how long it's been there. I don't even ever remember seeing a photograph of it in one piece. It was lifted with the tripod, epoxied back together, restored and cleaned, and this is the monument today. Let's see, what else can I say about that? Cathy is our historian. She knows so much more about the history behind these stones. but it has to do with the snowball in George Washington. That's all I know.
Israel trash.
Yes, sorry. This is a stone. This is the Grand Army of the Republic stone. It's a Civil War era. He was a gunner on the U.S. gunboat Essex, which was an ironclad, almost like it was almost below the surface. It would be used to ram wooden boats in the Civil War. And he died in 1862, early in the Civil War, of he had diphtheria or something, died in a hospital. It's amazing how many soldiers actually died of the diseases and the injuries that they got. Right. And on the left-hand side, of course, is the tools of the trade. Buckets, shovels. All right. This is another stone. This is Richard. And this is typical, and this is one reason why the DPW said that they couldn't come in and mold this stuff down, because they would be rolling over a lot of these historic stones. And this was leveled, dug out, leveled, and then set right up. Now, this is where I was talking about Cathy comes in, big time. Aside from being an expert with cutting down Japanese knotweed, what she's done on their site is on clarkcemetery.org in the plots tab. She'll take the storyline. So this is how you keep them alive. First of all, you don't forget them by raising their stones and repairing them and loading them up onto Find a Grave, because people come from all over the world now with ancestry and they want to know about their ancestors. So you can go on Find a Grave, you can find the picture of the gravestone, and you can find out a little bit more detail on a stone. Sometimes there'll be longitude and latitudes on stones of where the people died. Sometimes there'll be additional stories, more accurate dates than maybe you'd find in a town hall, especially if a town hall is burnt down and the records are gone. And in this first example with Alexander Benson, which was the stone prior to this, who he married, he died quite suddenly of a hemorrhage while fishing on the schooner Montrose. Okay, on George's Bank. Okay, that's my typo. And then the second one has to do with, he was lost on George's Bank along with his son Philip. And at this time, I'm so proud of you guys to come on up and receive your certificate.
No great adventure ever starts with I. They always start with we. So I would like everyone that has taken part in this, that's here, please stand up and be recognized. Oh, come on, there's more of you. Ben? Thank you guys, because without your work, it wouldn't be possible. We came here and found my great-grandmother about this high in briars and brambles. Behind is knotweed, and my hand would not be in the sun when that was taken, if I raised it in the knotweed. This is the person that created all of those bags. She cut the knotweed by hand with chompers as close to the ground as possible, loaded it into bags, and we toted it up the hill and got it in place where DPW would come and get it. She probably cut 1,000 bags of knotweed. Now, since she's done that, I've been able to weed eat it, and it keeps it down. So wildflowers and the grasses are coming back, and DPW is being great. I mean, we got a container for storage, we got parts, we got equipment, and we have a direct line for if we need something else. At least 40 direct relatives are in there. Alexander Benson's great-granddaughter and granddaughter called us within 30 minutes of Cathy posting the history online. 2 days later, they were with us in the cemetery. They had no idea where he was buried. So,
genealogy is my hobby, and I did his family history and found out that his family came in 1623. They've been here ever since. He's the first Clarke not to be born in Gloucester. His father was in the Air Force, so he was born at Walter Reed Army Hospital. But long line of Clarkes in Gloucester. He's related to pretty much every old family name. Obviously, you had to marry somebody, so you know, that's who he is. Anyway, we lived overseas for 20 years. We're an Air Force family too. And we came to visit the cemetery as part of my interest in the history in our family. And we were just dumbfounded. A lot of people didn't even know how to tell us to get to the cemetery. We finally found somebody who knew how to get to Clarke's, and we climbed over the rock wall and got in there. And we were just astounded to see the condition. So with that, we sold our condo in Hawaii and took that money and bought a place here so that we could be closer to the cemetery so that we could work on the cemetery. And we've been doing it ever since. And we'll do it as long as we can. I tell people I have an expiration date. I'm 70. I don't know how many more years I can do this. But if you like gardening, you know, cleaning up weeds and knotweed, and right now the cemetery is full of branches down from the winter, so we're always looking for volunteers, and we'll keep doing it. It's our love, it's our passion, and it's not just Clarke Cemetery. My husband has family in pretty much every cemetery on Cape Ann, so. Anyway, that's what we do, and we love it. Oh, and I want to be sure and thank the city of Gloucester. We now have a cemetery advisory commission. The mayor's been very supportive, and Mike Hale at DPW has been wonderful, so we really appreciate the support.
and there's a lot of volunteers.
Thank you. And the Cemetery Advisory Committee and Clarke's have Facebook pages and websites where they announce dates for cemetery cleanup or cemetery volunteer work, where everybody gets together and works on them. Our next awardee is the Annisquam Yacht Club, particularly the architect and the manager of the restoration project that was done there. And to present the awards is Bill Remsen.
Thank you. The awardee for the Annisquam Yacht Club project, the awardees are Josh Fenalosa from Brown Fenalosa Architects of Arlington and Lauren Norton, who was Commodore of the Yacht Club during the work. Lauren can't attend today, but I can hand her the certificate in a couple of days. The Annisquam Yacht Club is a community-based inclusive sailing and tennis club established in 1896. It's right on the Annisquam River, and I'm sure many of you have seen it. It occupies a beautiful 10,000 square foot shingle-style building on the Annisquam River. While it's a private club, it hosts many non-member and community events, including my daughter's wedding last year. The junior program is open to local children whose parents are not members, and the associated 501c3 Annisquam Sailing Club Tennis Program Incorporated provides scholarships for Gloucester children who otherwise might not be able to attend. And this also includes money for all the equipment like tennis rackets and sailing gear. I've got a couple of brochures that are out on the table out there. If anyone is interested or knows someone, a young person who might be interested in the sailing and tennis program, there's contact information in there. And so we encourage Gloucester and Cape Ann people to look into it. This is a 1905 view of the AYC from the Library of Congress. After over 100 years of service, the building needed a massive physical overhaul to correct decay and old design flaws, and to bring the building up to current code. This work was only part of a multi-phase effort to fully rehabilitate the building. One issue that the AYC is currently wrestling with is what to do about rising sea levels, since this will have a real impact. This project included repair of essential structural elements, installation of handicap bathrooms, compliance with Americans with Disability Act, ADA, access requirements, and compliance with modern fire and safety codes. This included installation of a new dry fire sprinkler and alarm system, and expansion and upgrading of the kitchen, restoration, not replacement, of original wood windows, rewiring and restoration of antique lighting fixtures, and restoration of original wood finishes. This is just, I'm an architect, so I had to show a drawing. This gives you an idea of how complex it is. Architects like drawings. Anyway, a view of the porch under restoration. This is the completely rebuilt gangway from the land to the building. It looks historic, but it's completely redone. It's wider, higher guardrails, et cetera, et cetera. And then an interior view showing this beautiful space. Quite changed, actually, in terms of windows and door placements, but it was the kind of project that after about 6 months, members said, wait a second, did anything change? And I consider that one of the greatest compliments to a preservation architect. And then this is a view of the renovated club from the water. I'd like to get Josh up here to receive the award. Thank you, Josh. And there's your award. That's great. Feel free to save it for mine.
Yeah. Hi. This was a great project. For a couple reasons, it was very, very exciting. Obviously, this is a unique structure. It's a wood frame building. It's over tidal water. It's accessed by a 180-foot long gangway. It had a lot of code issues going into it, and we corrected almost all of them. The other really exciting thing about it was that there were 400 clients on this project. So that made things definitely a little heated in the beginning. And as Bill said, at the end, everyone seemed really happy and everyone is very complimentary. The design worked out really well. And we basically reestablished the building in the original program of what the building was always designed for, but enhanced it with modern amenities. And it's a great project. So thank you very much for this.
Our next recipient of a preservation award is the Meeting House Foundation for Education and Outreach, and Bill is also presenting this award.
The Gloucester Meeting House Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit based in the beautiful and historic 1806 Unitarian Universalist Church in Gloucester, also known affectionately as the UU Church or the Gloucester Meeting House. It's the oldest Universalist congregation in America. These photos were provided by Reverend Janet Parsons, Cynthia Smith, David Stone, and Kathleen Williams. It's an absolutely beautiful building, and it's a very prominent part of the cityscape, and it would have been incredibly important from the water to the community of Gloucester for the last 200 plus years. So views of the spire and views from the water. The interior shows some of the exquisite woodwork, architectural details, the double curving staircase to the choir loft, and the stained glass windows. Importantly, this building is also on the National Register of Historic Places. That's a national form of recognition of historic value. It's recognized by the United States Park Service in that regard. This award is for two distinct categories: restoration and rehabilitation, and education and outreach. In recent years, all historic buildings have realized that maintaining their buildings is a real struggle. The UU Church has done in the past some amazing things to keep the building going, redoing the tower, the roof, etc. But there's never enough money for any organization. But thanks to the creativity and hard work of countless individuals, continued great strides have been made at the Meeting House in terms of physical preservation, functional upgrades, and community outreach. Today, the building is an amazingly vibrant, dynamic, and welcoming resource to the Gloucester community. The Meeting House Foundation work is a textbook example of historic preservation projects dealing with project planning and management, physical restoration and preservation, and community outreach and participation. Just a few images of the new sprinkler system, controls and pumps, valves and stuff on the left. And then this is the injection of a very interesting system of fireproof insulation that was added to the weather envelope. A lot of other physical interventions took place too, including ADA access improvements, the complete protection of the building with this innovative dry and wet sprinkler system using nitrogen priming instead of oxygen to deter rust in pipes and triple their longevity. That's a very important thing if anyone wants to get into the details of fire systems. Monitoring and alarm systems, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the community outreach and participation efforts have been remarkable and are too numerous to list. I'm sure people have participated in some ways, particularly their outdoor music and outdoor events. So this slide includes some images of interior music performance, exterior music performance, Mayor Safatia talking at some conference, I don't know which one. And then these are some of the posters for various other outreach that they had. Historic Preservation and Architectural Sustainability Symposium, Cape Ann Sustainability Fair to support carbon neutrality, Martin Luther King Day, etc. The list goes on and on. Now, to receive the award, please welcome Charles Nazarian, President of the Gloucester Meeting House Foundation.
Bill. Good afternoon, everybody. I think this gathering this afternoon shows why we're so proud of Gloucester. I think we all deserve a round of applause for our wonderful city. The Historical Commission is just one facet, and a very important facet. But I think what we heard here this afternoon shows how many amazing things are happening here in Gloucester and have happened in the past. And the preservation of our buildings and of the memory of the things that have happened here and the people who lived here is something that I think everybody in this room shares a passion for. In this particular instance, the Gloucester Meeting House Foundation, as Bill said, is a 501c3. And the idea for this came from Jerry Ackerman, who suggested to a group of us that we go visit the vicar at Old North Church in Boston. Because Old North had created a foundation many, many years ago called the Old North Foundation to support the historic Old North Church. And the vicar was enormously helpful to us in explaining how a church entity and a 501c3 entity could live side by side, but also be two separate organizations. And that's very important. It's, in fact, one of the hardest things for me to describe to people sometimes, because the English language is against us. We talk about going to the UU church, but we don't necessarily say the church building or the meeting house, and so we often confuse these things. But what is really important about having a 501, and we have a number of them here this evening, is that you can draw money from the state and federal level, and also, very importantly, in a community as diverse as Gloucester, folks who would maybe be a little hesitant to write a check to a church might be very willing to provide monies for a community center, for a civic hub, for a place where people gather for all kinds of non-religious gatherings. I have to say, nothing happens in a vacuum, and the people who sit here tonight, that they didn't do things on their own. I need to amplify. So one thing that we really need to do is have the members of the GMF board who are here, including Reverend Janet Parsons, to please stand and just be recognized. There's really three prongs to what happens at the Meeting House Foundation. And I hope that maybe some of this will be helpful to others of you who are involved with some of these wonderful projects. The three prongs are, for us, are programming, historic preservation, and bringing the building to the point where it is not only green but net zero. Those are three of our top goals, and they all interact one with the other, and they're very much part of our time. The question of programming was driven home for me many years ago when we set about to do the sprinkler system on the building after completing an ADA project and a number of other things that led to the creation of the foundation. We had some wonderful support. Lindsay Coolidge gave us $100,000 as an initial gift. I don't know what Gloucester would do or will do without Lindsay Coolidge and donors like him. We also received a number of other significant gifts. But when we first went to the Massachusetts Cultural Council, they turned us down. And was somewhat knocked out by that because I thought we had this incredible building and we had concerts and all kinds of cool things happening there. But they said that we weren't relevant enough to low-income people, to folks in the community who had other needs than going to a fine chamber concert, for example. And a little bit like Dustin Hoffman and Tootsie, I thought, well, we can do that. And we transformed the programming. And so that's where the summer series came from. A free concert every Friday night for the community that partners a different nonprofit that gets all the free will offerings from the audience with a different musical group. And that really put us on the map with the MCC. And the next year, they gave us $130,000 towards the sprinkler. So Tootsie works. On the historic preservation side, when you're dealing with a building dating back to 1806 with a history like this one, there's a lot of very careful work that one has to do about historic preservation. Some of that is exciting to people on an historic commission, but not necessarily to others. But what it really involves is preserving the historic fabric of the building in every way that you can. So, for example, when we installed elevators in order to get from one level to another, we disturbed no part of the 1806 building. When the fire sprinkler system went in, we were extremely careful, working with a lot of people who had experience in this area to make sure that what we did was either exposed and honestly expressed in the building, or if it was hidden, that it was not someplace where you couldn't get to if it leaked someday. And we hope that never happens, but This sort of thing is something that one has to take into account. The third prong is the question of going green, and it's the question of our time, the question of our generation. And very shortly after the Gloucester Meeting House Foundation was formed, a subgroup called Town Green 2025 was formed, led by Dick Prouty, and it is a collaboration between the Gloucester Clean Energy Commission, chaired by Candace Wheeler, and the GMF. And the goal of Town Green is for Gloucester to achieve by 2025 the least amount of carbon footprint, that is, to use the least amount of fossil fuel energy, and also to find ways to mitigate what fossil fuels we do use. I can announce to you tonight that the Gloucester Meeting House is actually, as far as we know, the first carbon neutral church in America, and certainly the first historic carbon neutral church in America. And this is the result of Harry Hintlian and a nonprofit called Reforest the Tropics. The Hintlian family examined our energy use and saw that the energy use in the building due to our R48 walls and all of the conservation efforts was remarkably low. But in order to bring us to carbon neutral, Reforest the Tropics planted 2 hectares, that's about 9 acres, of new rainforest. And the amount of carbon that gets pulled out of the air by those 2 hectares is more than equal to the carbon footprint of the building. And I encourage others to look into this. Reforest the Tropics is actually the only UN-sanctioned organization that is doing this. And if you want to bring your building to carbon neutral, and you've done all you can on the energy side, this is the way to go. And it's something that is well managed, something that will last for hundreds of years under their management system, and something that we're very proud of. And that was a wonderful gift. I can also report to you that the Massachusetts Cultural Council has not abandoned us. And only a week ago, we received notice that we will receive a new gift of $120,000 towards the tower restoration. And that is a testament to the state that we live in. The state of Massachusetts is a magnificent place to live, and we are very, very fortunate to live here. So I thank you all. There are some boards along the side wall if you'd like to know more about what's going on. And the website is gloucestermeetinghouse.org. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciate it.
We're down now to our last recipient, who only just learned about his award this very evening. We would like to present our Appreciation Award and Lifetime Achievement Award to David Rhinelander. David has been a past chairman of the Historical Commission, and in fact he recruited me. And this is where he and his wife Ann live, at 16 Pine Street. David retired there after a career as a newspaper journalist and a farmer, a little bit of a stretch, but a farmer in Connecticut. And I met with Annie. We had 2 or 3 meetings in the tea house to try to put together a biography for David for this event. And we came up with too many things, or great long lists of things, and probably more that's not in there. But David has long been an aficionado of American history. He's visited many historic sites like Williamsburg and Jamestown, Sturbridge, Yorktown, and so on. Here he is in Lebanon, Connecticut, at a reenactment of the Luzon and Hussars. They defended the inland route that was taken by Washington and Rochambeau from British attacks along New England shores. Washington and Rambo's defeat of Cornwallis, you'll recall from your American history class, liberated New England from British rule. David and Annie helped to survey a 9-state National Historic Revolutionary Route. It's called the Washington-Rochambeau Revolutionary Route, and it became official in 2009 in the Department of Interior legislation that was signed by President Obama. Here's part of the biography that Annie provided. He began as a reporter for the Gloucester Daily Times and has a 35-year career as a journalist for the Hartford Courant. I think one of the things that Annie found most exciting about her husband's work was his work for the Apollo missions, where he actually attended all the Apollo missions at Mission Control and wrote about them for the paper. He has a wonderful sash with a patch for each of the missions sewn on it. Kind of reminded me of my old Girl Scout badge. And you can see some of his other accomplishments. This is David with his sister, Mary Rhinelander McCarl, and his extended family. And here's some more list of David's accomplishments. In retirement, David has contributed in many ways and is still contributing to the public good in many ways. He's involved with the White Ellery House, with the Cape Ann Museum, with the Sawyer Free Library, with the Gloucester Meeting House, on the Gloucester 400th planning, and so on. Here's David. He's flanked by co-chair Bob Whitmarsh and the late former member of the Historical Commission, Tom O'Keefe, if you remember him. We were looking at the plaque commemorating Meeting House Green, which is opposite the White Ellery House, which had become completely overgrown. And with the help of the Gloucester DPW, we restored that landscape and had the stone moved to a better view from Washington Street. And David, we really thank you. And I know that this list is not complete. I think Annie's going to add to this now. But we thank you, and to show our appreciation for your many contributions to the value and substance of historic preservation to the city of Gloucester, we would like to present you with this certificate. David.
Let me truly say it's been my pleasure to be involved with not only with this commission, but with Gloucester. I just love Gloucester. And I had no idea I was getting this today. My wife kept telling me to get dressed up to come to the meeting. I was just going to sit in the back and say hi to everybody I knew. And she threatened me if I didn't put a tie on. And I said, no, I can't go that far. But, so I really didn't know. And I really want to thank you all. You've all listened to all of these things. This has been going on. I mean, I've done this, I did this for a number of years before Mary Ellen. So the number of wonderful things that have gone on in this city in preservation and restoration and just thinking of the history and how not to run the city over, it's just been amazing. And we've had very good success we have no legislative power like the district commission, but we can talk we've talked to a lot of you and said, please don't do it this way, think of doing something, and it's worked. So it's been a great pleasure. And I really do love this city. I came here at birth. We used to have my grandparents had a summer house. So I've been here in and out of this city forever, and I retired here. I'd been the chairman of the Connecticut Historical Commission. I retired here, and Abbott Lowell Cummings, who many of you know, has written books about the first period, said to me, David, when you get up there, get on the commission, all right? So I knew a couple of people, and there I was, and I just loved it. So thank you all, but thank you all for what you're doing, and just really think about this city and all of its history. And we're going to have the birthday in 23, so there'll be all sorts of things. I'm also involved in the Schooner Adventure and all the maritime history, so we'll put all this together, and it'll be an amazing birthday of a fabulous fabulous community, and all the pieces will come together. That's what we're going to be working on. So thank you all, and I don't need to say how good we all are, because you've heard it, how good you are. So anyway, thank you very much.
Annie, did you want to add anything to this? It's only fair, it's only fair.
Even seeing the list, you might not know how suffused David has been in history, and to some extent in participating in it. He, as he said, his life and historic work has been bookended by Eastern Point and return to Gloucester. But there have been 50 years of activity and impact in the meantime. And he's lived in some grand houses, and he also learned from his grandfather to thoroughly enjoy gardening, and went from gardening in some very impressive places, and right next to the Elizabeth Rose Garden in Hartford, to taking on a 17-acre pre-revolutionary farm, and restoring that and using it for a good 37 years. And while in Connecticut, working as a medical and science writer, which included starting out in local coverage, and also covering the legislature whenever they needed somebody who could figure out what was going on, long term. And soon after starting, he raised his hand when they asked if anybody would like to cover medicine, since his father had been an orthopedic surgeon. He said, yeah. So as medical writer, he sometimes covered United Technologies. They had a sense lab for smelling and whatever else, and a gait lab for amputees, mechanical prostheses. I wondered how soon that would happen. And out of that grew some exposure to the rocket work United Technologies was doing, and spacesuit development. And that led to what is historic both positively and negatively.
There it is.
His coverage of the moon shot most of the Apollo flights and some space lab. So, but my favorite story in all that gives you a sense of who David is as a person, because he was down there when Apollo 13 began to have trouble, and David was covering these so often in science programs, AAAS and cancer this and Deer Island genetics labs. So there was a cadre of reporters, including the New York Times. So David and a few other, particularly the New York Times reporter, explored a little once this news came out and found that there was a team working very hard to get that Apollo 13 back and all of its crew safely. So he called into the Current, and they said, well, it's so late, we're going to go with the AP story. And he said, oh, you better bring me right home, because you shouldn't be paying me down here if you're not going to use what I'm doing. So they held off, and the Hartford Current scooped the rest of the country on that story. So his character as well as his exposure. And I shouldn't do this. I couldn't find my pictures of David on the farm. There are some fantastic ones of him in his straw hat, suspended dungarees on his John Deere, mowing the meadow between our house and the stream in 98-degree weather. Somehow he always picked 98 degrees to go out and do the mowing in. I can't find the picture, so I can't show you that. You did see a little of our house and family, and I think some of his attributes are genetically acquired anyway. I see him as being extremely high aptitude and adaptable, as you can tell from the things he's willing to tackle. And I attribute that to his being a direct descendant of Alexander Hamilton. And we had the privilege of being at the New York Historical Society's fundraiser celebrating Lin-Manuel Miranda's production of Hamilton. So this is a picture of Lin-Manuel Miranda, David and some other cousins and spouses and a few children in there, between the bronze statues of Hamilton and Burr shooting each other. Thank you, Annie. And I do want to thank Mary Ellen. She initiated this last year, and we had to be away. And in all the time I've had, I still can't squeeze them into a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. This concludes this year's Preservation Awards ceremony. Many thanks again to the Cape Ann Museum for hosting this event and preparing the programs, and congratulations to everyone. And would the award recipients please gather in the front of the room for a group photograph.